some wisdom from God's word. Proverbs 24. He who says to the wicked, "You are righteous," peoples will curse him, nations will abhor him. But to those who say to the wicked, but to those who rebuke the wicked will be delight, and a good blessing will come upon them.
On that passage, we will be coming back to that one later. Like, what does that have to do with Mother's Day? Don't worry, we'll get to it. But I do want to wish a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in the audience. And if you weren't wished happy Mother's Day yet, it's because your sons and your daughters knew that I was going to present you with this wonderful card this morning. So there you go. And they all promised to take you to Sizzler afterwards. But happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. We are glad for the work that you do and continue to do. And we're very thankful for you. With Mother's Day being kind of the backdrop of what's kind of on everybody's mind this morning, I thought it would be beneficial to talk about parenting a little bit. I've had two opportunities recently to speak on parenting. One was back in October, actually in Idaho, and you guys were there, so if you hear some of the same points, just amen them again. But I got to speak on parenting there, and I was asked to speak on parenting at a thing in Delano for men. They're at a men's group they do on Monday nights. And I was been petrified every single time I'm given this topic. In fact, I got proof of this. Brandon Evans, the preacher in Delano, sent me a text asking me to preach on this. And he asked me some questions about jiu-jitsu and stuff, so I blanked those out of there because you don't know what he's talking about. But I said, also, you will need to talk about how you manage multiple kids and have them develop respect for their parents and love and develop a love for God. And if you can't see what I replied this. Well, I'm still trying to figure all that out. I'm like, I don't know why I was being asked to speak on this, but when you got 6 kids, people are like, well, he's got a lot of kids, so might as well ask him. And I'm still trying to figure out this process. But I know that as a parent, over and over again, I fall short, I fail, I make mistakes, I have to change how I do things. I have to learn from past parenting failures. And, we kind of experimented on Owen, a lot of different ideas. Claire, we did everything perfect because it's Claire. But, by the time maybe we now Fiona, we should know what we're doing. But we realized that, wait a second, we're still trying to figure all of that out. And I know in an audience like this, we have people that have kids at home. We have people that have kids that have maybe moved out, people that are raising grandkids. We have people that maybe aren't parents. That's okay. All of you are still engaging with kids on a regular basis. I know it because all of our little kids in the kids' classes were in the entryway greeting all of you when you all came in. So even though you're not their parent, you are still influencing them in some way. So this lesson is for all of us. And I want you all to know that as we begin this lesson, and I'm going to give a lot of different points on parenting, I don't believe that anyone is a perfect parent. And by me presenting these ideas this morning, I am by no means saying that, well, I have this figured out, so you need to listen to me. I'm just trying to figure this out with you, okay? I'm in a panic right now because I got kids from 18 down to 7, and I got to figure out how to parent all of them and what to do. See, I don't even know their ages half the time. Thankfully, I have a file on my phone that keeps some of that information when we go to the doctor's office. Like, I had to confirm the identification of one of the kids a while back at the doctor, and I had to ask Gwen to tell me how old Fiona was. It's pretty embarrassing. No one is perfect as a parent, and no one is going to do a perfect job. Only God's perfect. But all of us as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends of children, we should all be working to improve how we interact with them, how we raise them, how we guide them, how we mentor them, how we influence them, what example we are setting before them. Because, first and foremost this morning, because this is a spiritual gathering and we are a church, children are leaving Christianity in droves. And maybe not as kids necessarily, but youth that is brought up in Christian environments are not sticking around statistically. It's not good. The statistics aren't at all. And it's across any kind of religious group, really, for the most part, they are leaving. Yeah, you can go from progressive churches to conservative churches to fundamental churches to anything else in between. They're leaving big time. The statistics are not good. And what I want to do this morning is try to offer some ideas on how we can fix, at least make it better, okay? And try to improve these statistics to save our young people. But I'll also tell you that onus of all of this, the responsibility, doesn't fall on, I would say, the congregations as a whole. It doesn't fall on programs. It doesn't fall on youth group leaders or youth ministers or anything else like that. Although it's hard to say, kids usually leave the faith because of their parents. It's because we as parents mess up. Now, I know kids become adults and kids make their own decisions, and you can do everything right and they still leave. Jesus did everything right and Judas still betrayed him. So I'm not going to say that, well, you failed as a parent, something like that. So I'm not saying that at all. But the responsibility for the faithfulness of our children, although churches can screw it up, it really does fall on those that are in the most influence over them, which should be parents, or those that are raising them and guiding them and teaching them. Those people bear a big responsibility in ensuring the faithfulness of the next generation. So what I want to do this morning, this is going to be, I know it's a Mother's Day lesson, like now I'm picking on the mothers. We always pick on the fathers on Father's Day, so we'll just pick on all parents as a whole on Mother's Day. So I want to give some ideas, very practical ideas. This isn't an exhaustive list, just the list that Cliff Sabroe came up with. You might come up with a different list, but this is the list that I came up with of what would I tell parents that they should do to help their kids stay faithful to Jesus, or just in general, how to be a better parent. This is in no particular order. This is not by weighting it any way, and there's going to be other points that you have, but these are ones that I have that I think, as we're thinking about parenting today, will help you in influencing children. And do not turn off your brain right now and go, I don't have kids no more, they're out of the house, or I never had children. It still applies to you. Because all of us should be concerned with the faithfulness of the next generation. Whether they are our kids or not, we should be concerned that they should be following God. And we should be worried about them and care about them and love them enough to influence them. So even if you're not a parent, you're all parenting and mentoring and influencing kids in some way. All right, so with all that being said, here's some ideas for keeping kids on fire for God. Number one, as parents, grandparents, mentors of children, we should always be seeking lots of information. Now, this goes for everything in life. You want to be better at anything? Seek information. Learn more. Don't get stuck with the way you did things at one time and go, well, this is the only way. Learn. Maybe you'll learn something new. Maybe you'll get a new idea. Maybe you'll hear a better way of handling a situation. We as parents must put in the work. If we care about our children, we should be constantly studying how to be better parents. Sadly, the ones that aren't always the best parents are the ones that don't study. And you provide materials, you provide classes, church provides seminars and all sorts of things, but they don't always get attended. But if you want to be a better parent, number one, seek information to do that. Look for books, look for blogs, listen to podcasts, go on YouTube, attend seminars, workshops, classes. If you value this job that you have in raising young people, take the time to put the effort in and learn how to do it. There's been different projects I've done over the years. I remember Owen, we were working on a car that he had. He had this Mercedes. It was awful to work on because they don't even use normal bolts on Mercedes. I had to buy a socket set of terms that I had never heard of before to remove the water pump on this Mercedes. But because we're cheap, we weren't going to pay a Mercedes mechanic to change a water pump on a Mercedes that wasn't worth the price of the water pump. So we're like, we're going to tackle this ourselves. But I knew this was going to be a crazy job, okay? So I watched video after video after video before we opened the hood of that car and learned how to change that water pump. The videos didn't mention, by the way, that it was reverse threads on that big old fan pulley, but we figured it out after breaking a couple ratchets. But I took the job seriously because I knew that if I messed this up, I had one chance on this. Because if you mess up the Mercedes, which don't buy old Mercedeses, but if you mess up the Mercedes, you have to take it to someone who specializes them, and they cost lots of money, and I didn't want to do that. So I was in a panic. I have to do this right. I need to consume as much possible information that I can so that I don't blow it. I have 6 children that I'm blessed with. I have one chance to parent them. One chance. I better take it so seriously that I am constantly consuming information on how to do a good job with that. And I can think of different books I've read over the years that have shaped my parenting. I remember even before Owen was born, laying in our loft in that tiny apartment we had in Denver, reading a book on parenting. Like, okay, I can't blow this because, he's my kid. I don't want to mess this up. Consume information constantly on how to be better parents. And this idea is biblical. Proverbs 3 and verse 13 says, "Blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding." You want to be blessed, find wisdom. Wisdom will help you be a better parent. Proverbs 4 verse 7, "The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom." I love how profound that is, by the way. The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. Right? But sometimes you don't even get that. It's like, you want to be smart? Well, get smarter, right? The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Proverbs 18 verse 13 says, "An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of a wise person seeks knowledge." If you want to raise up kids right, learn how to do it. Look for information on how to do it. Study Bible passages on how to do it. Take it seriously enough that you're willing to learn and put into work and study in order to be a good job. And don't just go, well, my kids are older. You can still influence people better now. I am a better parent now, 18 years into this, okay? I'm probably going to be even a better grandparent. I don't know, one day. But right now, I can still learn and be better. So number one, seek lots of information. Number two, as we're talking about parenting this morning, choose your influencers wisely. As you know, people use this term kind of in a lot of different ways nowadays. People who are considered influencers are those that have a following on social media. It's people that have maybe an Instagram account with 1 million people following them, or they're a vlogger or something like that. They're people that are influencing other groups of individuals. But as parents, there's going to be people who influence how we parent. And the big one that usually influences how we parent is usually who? Our parents. Our parents. But let's be honest. Some parents blow it. Some parents that maybe you had didn't do a good job. And the influence that they had on you affects the way you see things. It affects the way you think about discipline, about time with your kids, about all sorts of stuff. We are all products of the individuals who influence us. Children in the room, you are products of the parents that are influencing you right now. But you have to choose whether or not you're going to allow their negative influence to influence you negatively. So let's say you had less than idealistic parents. They didn't parent you in a way that was good. And there's all different ways that can fill in. Sometimes parents have ups and downs and all that. But let's say you had a bad influence on you at home. You can make the choice to say, I'm not going to follow down that path. I think it's Dave Ramsey, the financial guy, always gives this illustration about changing your family tree. Okay? The idea is your family's maybe been going in one direction for generations. You can make the choice to say, I'm not going to be influenced by that anymore. I'm going to choose to surround myself with people who influence me in a positive direction. Even though those parents there, I even love them, but they might have not been the best influence. I'm not going to model my parenting after them. I'm going to find people who do a better job, and I'm going to model my parenting after what they do. In Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 17, it says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Proverbs 13 verse 20 says, whoever walks with the wise will become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. If you're surrounding yourself with good parents, or even you just look for good parents and model certain behaviors from them, or learn from them, you will be a better parent because of it. In the passage that Tim read, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways. People around you will influence you. Maybe you growing up had wrathful people in the home, but you choose to say, I'm not going to let them influence me because they will entangle me in a snare. People influence our parenting choices. Let's make sure the ones that are influencing us are good. And with that then, let's make sure that we as parents are influencing the next generation to be better. Recently, I was speaking at a staffing meeting, actually, on mentorship, and I was talking about how mentors fill in the gaps in people's lives. And this is a concept that I've been thinking about a lot for the past few years. We as parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters in Christ, extended family, all of that, we fill in different gaps in people's lives. And let's make sure that the people that are filling in the gaps in our parenting model and in how we live and how we interact with children are people that are good influences and not bad ones. So that's point number 2. All right, moving on. Point number 3, and because I like using jiu-jitsu pictures, number 3, be disciplined and consistent as a parent. And this is probably one of the hardest things to do because it takes work. In jiu-jitsu, on the mats, in a wrestling room, in a ball field, whatever it is, usually a good coach will tell the athletes that they're coaching to not sit rounds out, to not take a break. When I ran track, if you caught someone walking, well, you're running track. It doesn't involve walking track, it's running track. So you got to be disciplined and you have to run. You cannot sit back and take a break when it comes to raising up the next generation of faithful Christians. You can't go, well, I'll get around to it, or right now my life's a little bit busy, or right now I'm preoccupied with something else. As parents, grandparents, those that are influencing children, we have to always be willing to engage with them, even when it's difficult, even when you're tired, even when you're sore, even when you're grumpy, even when you've had a long day, even when traffic has been heavy, even when you don't feel good, even when the kids are annoying. You have to be disciplined and consistent, and sometimes you have to force yourself to do what needs to be done to raise up those children in a faithful way. You force yourself to pray with them. There'll be times that I'll be laying in bed and the kids are getting ready to go to bed and I'm laying there and I'm getting ready to fall asleep. I think, I didn't really talk to them tonight. I like to go around and check in on them when they're getting ready for bed, pray with them and things like that. And sometimes, sorry children, I have to force myself to do it because I'd rather just sit on my phone and watch Seinfeld. But I get up and I go down to their room and I sometimes wake them up and say, hey, we need to pray, something like that. Don't always do it. I'm not always perfect. But you got to force yourself. You got to force yourself to have Bible conversation with your kids. You got to force yourself to get them into Bible study. You got to force yourself to engage them. You have to make plans. You have to set goals, and you have to stick to those. And you have to do what needs to be done no matter what. You can't make excuses with this. When you make excuses, we lose our children. We got to be disciplined and consistent. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11 says, for the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. You have to discipline yourself as a parent. And we're not talking about, I punish myself. No, we're talking about routines. We're talking about habits. We're talking about behaviors. We're talking about doing things that are hard to do, that require sacrifice, but you do it because you know what it's going to yield in the future. In Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28, it says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. You have to be self-controlled as a parent. You have to be disciplined when you're working with children because they will try you, they will make you upset, they will stress you out, you'll get at your wit's end, you'll have a short fuse, all of that. You got to have that self-control. Paul to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run? Again, because you run in a race, you don't walk, right? All the runners run, but only one receives the prize. So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, which, totally off topic, I think Paul really likes sports. Because Paul does a lot of sports illustrations. And the Corinthian church is on an isthmus where they had the Isthmian Games, which was like the Olympic Games, but on the off years. I think Paul was a fan. Totally off topic. But they had running and they had boxing. But he mentions that when I box, I don't do it as if I'm beating the air. It's not shadow boxing. It's not pointless. Have you ever watched two people box that don't know what they're doing, and they throw these massive haymakers, and they miss, and then what do? They gas out, and they get knocked out, right? He goes, I don't do that. I discipline my body, and I keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. We get this. We get it when it comes to boxing. We get it when it comes to running. You run till you hit the finish line. But he goes, people get it when it comes to getting a trophy, a perishable wreath. We know these principles when it comes to winning a race or winning a fight. You know, we get a trophy, we get a medal, we get a belt or something. But Paul says, I do it, spiritually speaking, because I'm looking forward to an imperishable wreath, talking about a reward that's not going to go away. That's what he looks forward to. So as parents of children, or even those that are influencing children, we have such an important task before us. You would never slow down in a running race. Why are you slowing down when it comes to raising up faithful children? We have to be disciplined, and we have to be consistent. That's lesson number 3. Lesson number 4 this morning, and just because I want to use one more really cool jiu-jitsu picture, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Don't you think that little guy's going to be uncomfortable here in just a moment, right? Fighting that guy. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable as a parent. Here's what I mean by this. Well, I'll just be blunt. It's hard to parent. And there's times that are awkward. There's times that are stressful. There's times that are hard. There's times that require you to be nervous and all of that. Maybe you have to have the talk with your children. Is that comfortable? Or is that uncomfortable to have those kinds of discussions? When not only are you talking about reproduction with children, now you have to talk to them about various sins that are out there involved with sexual immorality. That's uncomfortable. You have to talk about pornography. That's uncomfortable. You have to correct a behavior. That's uncomfortable. You have to make a rule that embarrasses them in front of their friends. That's uncomfortable. You have to make a rule that embarrasses you in front of their friends' parents. That makes you uncomfortable. You have to go talk to another parent about a conflict, a situation, or something that happened. Is that comfortable? No. That's hard. As parents, if we love our children, we will get comfortable being uncomfortable. Let's get a couple examples, biblically speaking. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, he says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. It's hard to confront somebody in sin. All of us would agree with that, right? It's hard to correct somebody. It is scary. It's scary to do that. When you have to have a difficult conversation, we will avoid that at all cost. As parents, though, and those that are working with kids, you have to have those difficult conversations. Now, he gives a broad principle here of you need to try to restore anyone who's, caught up in sin, but you got to do that as a parent, too. Maybe your kids are doing something sinful, or they're doing something dangerous. And, maybe it's easier when they're little. When they're 2, you go, no, don't touch that, you're going to get burned. Okay, you don't go, well, I was kind of embarrassed to do that. It makes me really nervous. So I figure they'll cover that in Bible class. No, you address it, right? You deal with the issue. But as they get older, it gets more challenging. Now we got to talk about the influence of what you're watching, what you're viewing, the friends you hang around with. You got to talk about things like dating and relationships. And then maybe they get older, they move out of the house. It doesn't end there, right? You still correct. You still confront. You still get comfortable being uncomfortable. Doesn't matter how old they are, people still need to be corrected and influenced. We have an obligation to do that. But that is uncomfortable at times. And sometimes we will do everything to pass the buck on that. You can't do that as parents. We can't just wait for, well, maybe the church will make an announcement that we're not going to, whatever. No, deal with the issue. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 4, actually it's 6 and verse 4, says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. Instead, bring them up into discipline and instruction of the Lord. He's basically saying, look, don't be a jerk to your kids, but you do need to correct them, you do need to discipline them, and you need to teach them how to follow God. get comfortable being uncomfortable. And then finally, number 5 this morning, your victory as a parent is helping those children, your team, your family, your friends, the people that you're influencing, win. You know, like I've mentioned before, I coach. I know many of you have coached and refed and done all sorts of things like that. Some of you have taught in school. Some of you have ran after-school programs. Some of you are involved in education. Some of you have taught in the Bible class here at West Visalia. Some of you have been up at Bible camp. I know all of you care about kids in many different ways. Your goal, always as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor, as a parent, needs to be to help the children be better than you. A good coach, a good teacher is going to always sacrifice what they want in order to help their students succeed. Our number one goal as parents is to help our children succeed, right? To be successful. But we're not talking about earthly success. One line that I have kind of stuck with my entire life with my kids, and I don't know where I learned it, probably someone way smarter than me gave me the idea. But the goal that I always tell my kids is that my goal for you is to become faithful, functioning adults. That's it. I don't care what career you do. I don't care where you live and all these different things like that. But I want you to be faithful to Jesus and take care of your stuff. That's it. Be faithful to Jesus and take care of your life, your family, and whatever else kind of comes along with it. That's our goal as parents, is to raise up that next generation of faithful number 1, functioning adults. Now, sometimes we do a really good job raising up people that are really good in business, good with money, good in a particular sport, but number 1 needs to be faithful first. Are we raising up believers? Are we raising up disciples? Are we raising up Christians? In Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, I like how this translation said it. It says, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. We have to direct them toward the right path, and the right path is Jesus. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 4 says, let each of you not only look out for his own interest, but for the interest of others. I see a lot of selfish parents sometimes. Parents who are more concerned with their life, their happiness. Sometimes it's under the guise of like self-care or me or there's something else like that. Like, I got to watch out for self right now. My kids will take a back seat. No. Part of being a Christian is we always put others first. That's what Jesus did. That's why he died on the cross. Loving your neighbor, putting them first, that idea is what Christianity is all about. It's not about me. It's about others. Obviously, that would include the home. Okay? Husbands need to put their wives before themselves. Wives need to put their husbands before themselves. Parents need to watch out for the kids and put them before themselves. Yes, I know kids can become idolatry and all sorts of weird stuff, and you see unhealthy relationships. I'm not talking about that stuff, but I'm talking about sacrificing because you care about others as more important than yourself. So lesson number 5, your victory as a parent is helping your family win. And then finally, number 6, and this one I kind of put in here because I don't know how it fits in the list. But number 6, advice for parents this morning, is there is no substitution for time. You must spend time with your children. And I don't have a Bible verse necessarily that says this. Maybe you could talk about verses about love and about caring and about putting others first. There's lots of passages that mention that. But my own practical advice to all of you is spend as much time possible as you can with those children. With your own kids, with your grandkids, with kids in this congregation. Get to know them and influence them. There is no substitution for time. Children need to know that they can depend on their mom and dad, that you're going to be there for them. Something I've been blessed with is a life that allows me to spend a lot of time with my children. Being with ministry and us homeschooling our kids and stuff like that, there's a lot of times that we spend time together. Even in like secular employment, I take my kids with me places because I want them to be with me. I want to influence them. I want to be friends with them too. Yes, I'm their parent and I'm going to correct them, but I love conversing with my children. A child needs to know that he or she can depend on their mom and dad. So my practical advice to you as well is spend the maximum amount of time you possibly can with your children. That might mean you take a different job. That might mean you sacrifice the bigger house. That might mean you don't do the things that you like to do in your hobbies and hang out with your friends. Spend the most time you can with your children. That means you put your goals maybe on hold for them. Play with them. Teach them. Talk to them. Listen to them. Pray with them. Study with them. I say recently, when you get old, everything's recently. It's probably like 12 years ago now. I read a book called, the last time I read a book was 12 years ago. I've read others. But it was the book Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters by Dr. Meg Meeker. Highly recommend the book. Really cool stuff. It was when Claire was little. I was like, okay, I can't blow this. She's a girl. You know, I got boys down now. I've had one for like 2 years. I got this. But I can't mess it up with a girl. So I remember reading this book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And in the book, she gives a lot of stories because she was like a psychologist working with kids or a counselor or something about real life scenarios she was in. And in one situation, she was talking with one of the young ladies that she is working with, and the girl was talking about how her dad was always there for her, that every night he would come in and sit on the foot of her bed and just talk to her. And now something stuck with me. I was like, I want to do that kind of thing too. But after talking to the father says, well, I did that often, but I didn't do it every night. I know she says every night, but there was nights I was away on business. There was nights that I just got too tired and didn't get around to it. There was nights that she was up late doing homework and I didn't get a chance to it. So he goes, maybe it was really even just 40% of the time that he did it. But to the daughter, it was my dad's always there. That just that amount of time alone made it seem like he was always present. Imagine if it was 60% of the time, 80% of the time, all the time. You need to know, and your kids need to know, that you will always be there for them because you are always around them, helping them, influencing them. Oh, I'm not saying helicopter parenting, where you don't let them learn and make mistakes and do their own thing, but be around them as much as you possibly can and enjoy every minute that you have with them. So then we ask the question, how do we guarantee the faithfulness of our children? I will tell you, I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't fully know. I've made mistakes along the way, and I'm going to continue to make mistakes. And by the grace of God, I know that I can be forgiven for those mistakes. And hopefully my children learn to embrace forgiveness, grace, and mercy too when their parents mess up. But I will tell you that with that then, no matter which one of these ideas stood out to you, all of them take work. All of them take time. But as a parent, I know that my family's souls depend on it. This is the most important thing. I love you guys, but my number one goal is not to get you to heaven. It's to get them. Okay? That's my number one goal. You guys are next. I'm working on you. But my number one goal is my children, is to raise up my family in a godly way. To be a godly husband, and to be a godly father, and to help my children be the same one day. That's my number one goal. And as we work with all the children in this congregation, the children we work with at Bible camp, children at the Manuelito Children's Home, children that we know and influence, let's take the time, let's do the work, and let's sacrifice to save their souls before it's too late. The lesson is yours this morning. Maybe that wasn't the most encouraging, way to go, moms, kind of lesson, but parenting was on my mind as we're thinking about Mother's Day, and I think it's a lesson that's needed. And I know mothers know this too, because I will tell you a lot of times what you see when families are falling apart and things like that, it's the moms that are consistent. So dads, we can step up too a little bit more. But moms make a huge influence in the lives of children, absolutely. Fathers make a huge influence in the lives of children. Grandparents do, churches do, friends, extended family do. Let's make sure we put in the effort to raise up the next generation of faithful